Mary Barra is the chair and chief executive officer of General Motors. She also chairs the Business Roundtable and serves on several boards, including the Walt Disney Company and Duke University. She's the daughter of a die maker who worked in a GM plant for 39 years. Her first job at the company came at age 18 when she was a co-op student at the Pontiac Motor Division. After graduating from college in 1985 with a degree in electrical engineering, she returned to GM as a senior engineer at a Pontiac Fiero plant. She worked her way up through the line roles, including leading product development for the entire company, and staff roles, including leading internal communications and human resources. When she became CEO in 2014, GM was in crisis. The company recalled 2.6 million automobiles due to a flaw in ignition switches, which had caused fatalities and cost GM more than $1 billion in compensation. She's credited with deftly steering the company through the crisis by being transparent about the issue and its causes, and acting forthrightly to accept responsibility and take action to ensure it never happened again. As GM's leader, Mary has made a pledge to work toward a world with zero crashes to save lives, zero emissions so future generations can inherit a healthier planet, and zero congestion so customers get back a precious commodity, their time. This is a bold and ambitious promise that requires the company to truly transform itself. She has announced a plan to ramp up sales of electric vehicles and to stop making gasoline-powered light-duty vehicles by 2035. Let's turn to the video.
I can say firsthand that integrity drives every decision that she makes, whether it's the most strategic on behalf of the future of the company or something more trivial. And I will also say that Mary demands integrity from every one of her leaders, and that infuses into the culture of the organization.
An incredible leader, aspirational, inspirational, all of those things for women. I think that's a big role that she doesn't necessarily concentrate on, but it's a big outcome of the way she does her job. If you look at her core values and what she stands for, I think integrity is probably the basis of that, along with honesty. And I would also say very transparent. She is an incredible leader, obviously, but she also does what is right, even when it's difficult or hard.
I think one thing that people should know about Mary that is remarkable is that she truly is who she seems. What you see is what you get with Mary Barra, and that's not always the case. I find her to be delightful to work with and for, and I find her to be very demanding in a way that drives meaningful change in the enterprise.
The decisions that she made and how she represented the company was, big examples of her integrity, honesty, transparency, and doing what's right. And I would also say that carries into, the pressure of short-term Wall Street expectations. We have to meet those expectations and beyond. We have to do that, but the way we do it is very important.
We spent a lot of time at the senior leadership team talking about individual purpose and collective purpose. And Mary very proudly talks about the fact that her purpose in life and in her career is to make sure that everyone around her has the opportunity to be their best self. And I see that in everything she does, and it just makes a wonderful culture, and it's a joy to work with and for her.
For her strength as a leader, determined to do the right thing, for her transparency and willingness to accept responsibility, for her direct communication style, I am pleased and honored to present the Larry Foster Award for Integrity in Public Communication to General Motors CEO Mary Barra.
Well, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate first the kind introduction, Roger, and I want to thank the Arthur W. Page Center for recognizing me with this year's Larry Foster Award for Integrity in Public Communication. I'd also like to congratulate and thank Lester and John for their leadership in their fields and their commitment to truth well told. Tonight's program is centered around integrity and truthful public communications, and I am proud that General Motors and our world-class communications team are included. At GM, we are guided by a set of shared behaviors. One of them is win with integrity. A cornerstone of my leadership philosophy has always been do the right thing even when it's hard. That means leading with transparency and communicating with truth and authority. As I tell the entire team, your integrity is everything. It takes years to build and can crumble in a moment. And once it's gone, it's almost impossible to get back. If you win without integrity, you really haven't won. The importance of trusted communication has never been greater. The Arthur W. Page Center is committed to advancing ethics and responsibility in corporate communication, and it is an honor to be recognized by this respected organization. So thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Mary. You know, that was really interesting. For your response to the ignition switch crisis, you were given great credit for addressing the problem forthrightly and honestly, being open and honest about it. You apologized to the families of victims, set up a compensation fund for them before any legal liability had been established. Webster's dictionary defines integrity as firm adherence to a code of especially moral or artistic values. It sounds like you just, with your win with integrity, addressed the moral code that you adhere to. Is that right?
Yes, I think you've captured it well. The behaviors around, doing the right thing when it's hard and winning with integrity is something we talk about at the company quite often. And rarely do I do a town hall or have a leadership meeting without reinforcing, yes, we have big goals and we have a lot to execute, but we have to do it the right way. So I think it is something that we are working hard to make sure is part of everyone as collectively we create the General Motors culture.
Well, it sounds like the crisis and your response to it and your leadership really has redefined the culture at GM. Should we be thinking of it that way?
Well, I would say even before we had the ignition switch crisis, we worked on setting up, really what were the values of the company. And so as we got into dealing with the crisis, we were able to demonstrate we were going to live those values of doing what's right for the customer, being transparent, and doing everything in our power to make sure it never happened again. And so by demonstrating it during a difficult time, I think it really did start to, communicate to everyone in the company, we're serious, we mean it. It's not just something we're going to say when times are good, but when we're facing challenges, this is how we're going to work through them. And it did take hold, and we've continued to build on it ever since.
So let's turn to 000, your goal of eliminating emissions, car crashes, and congestion. With so much uncertainty in the world right now, this feels like a hugely ambitious goal. Do you feel you're on track to fulfill this vision?
I do. I think, when you go back and you look at General Motors, over 100 years ago when the vehicle came out, what automobiles did is they gave people freedom and changed the way communities came together and people could connect. But with that, over this last 100 years, there has been, there's been crashes, there's been an impact to the environment, and with congestion, I think we all get frustrated with how that impacts our daily lives. When we look at, what General Motors is doing, first from a crash perspective, whether it's our driver assistance technology or it's Cruise, our level 4, level 5 autonomous driving capability, we believe that will ultimately be safer, either assisting the driver or, complete autonomous driving. So that gets at zero crashes. The fact that we've committed to an all-electric light-duty portfolio by 2035 starting in the U.S., I think speaks to getting to a world with zero emissions. And we also have fuel cell technology for vehicles with have a heavier duty use case. And then congestion, we believe when we have electric vehicles and autonomous, and we can create new solutions like we're doing with BrightDrop to really reduce congestion, especially in urban environments. So we are on the path, and we believe with the technology and capability General Motors has, we're well poised to work toward our goal of zero crashes, zero emissions, and zero congestion.
I was interested that you started your response by referencing freedom and connection, because the 000 is really how do you mitigate the negative impacts of the benefit to society that you're creating And the purpose of the company isn't 000. The purpose is freedom and connection.
Right. Well, we actually talk about our purpose is to pioneer the innovations that move and connect people to what matters. And
Right.
that's what the vehicle has allowed us to do. So very much we feel now we have the technology to continue to provide that freedom and that connection and being able to go where you want to go, but doing it in a way that solves some of the issues that arose. And I think General Motors is well positioned to do it. And frankly, I feel we have a responsibility to do it.
Do you feel yourself that GM is in competition with your competitors on these ambitious goals to make vehicles safer and better? Or do you find yourself in partnership with them in some ways?
I wouldn't say we're in partnership, but I think, everybody who's putting a vehicle on the road, whether it's a traditional OEM, somebody who's been in business for as long as General Motors, or somebody who's new, I think everybody understands the importance of safety and is committed. But I think what makes General Motors maybe special in this space is that by stating it publicly, it really helps guide the whole an entire organization. Similarly, we made early investments from an autonomous perspective, and whether it's again driver assistance or full autonomous, that gets at that safety perspective, and then the commitment to EVs. So as we look at each of the steps, I think we're really demonstrating our commitment. But I think directionally, the whole industry is moving there.
Yeah, and there's got to be culture change involved with getting people to think differently about gasoline engines, for example.
You're absolutely right. And that was one of the reasons that a couple of years ago, we communicated that we were planning to make our light duty fleet, starting in the United States, all electric by 2035. I think still to this point, we're the only major car company that covers the whole portfolio that has made that commitment. So, and that was so important for our culture because it got people to focus on how am I going to do it as opposed to talking about when and if. And so it was a very critical moment for the company.
That's really interesting. I love that. Let's shift gears a little bit here. Last month, for the first time in history, more than 10% of the CEOs of the Fortune 500 were women. You are one of 4 women CEOs in the Fortune 25. Are we making enough progress fast enough?
Well, I think when you look at who's in the CEO role, you have to look at the pipeline. And so, of course, I think everybody would like to move faster. So it's not a statistic that we even monitor because, we have equal representation across the board. But to me, what the focus has to be on creating that pipeline and giving people the right experiences in their career. So when the opportunity arises, they're ready. And that's what we're focused on at General Motors.
That's great. When you decided to study engineering in college, that was relatively rare for a woman. Today, more girls are studying STEM, and I think GM is trying to encourage that. One of our viewers this evening, a GM engineer named Eric Chamil, wants to know what advice you would give to his sister who's considering a career in engineering.
I would say go for it. From getting an engineering degree is such a strong foundation because not only do you learn the fundamentals of engineering, whether it's mechanical, electrical, biomedical, civil, you learn the fundamentals, but you also learn logical problem solving. And, when you look at every single industry, technology is disrupting or changing it. And so to have a fundamental understanding of technology, whatever you do in your career, I think an engineering degree is such a great foundation. So I've never regretted studying electrical engineering. And I can't tell you how many times it has been a huge benefit to my entire career.
And even as you moved into staff roles, communications and HR, and ultimately into senior management leadership roles, you're not practicing engineering, but if I'm understanding you correctly, you're using decision-making and analytical principles that you learned as an engineer?
That's exactly it. I'm a very positive person. I always say, the glass isn't half full or half empty. Mine's 3/4 full because I believe if there's a problem in front of us, there's a solution that we can find. And so I think that problem-solving mindset comes from my early training as an engineer.
A lot of the people watching us this evening are students studying strategic communication and public relations. And one of my messages to them always is, you need to understand the business and you need to be a strategic thinker on business issues. Do you agree with that? Are you
Oh,
looking for that in your communications leadership?
absolutely. I think it's so important for everyone in the company to be not looking just where we are, but where we're going. And I think it's especially true for the team that is dedicated to, internal, external, and communications, because they're so important. If with that understanding, they can better shape messages. So it's critically important.
The automotive industry is undergoing its greatest transformation. We've been talking about that. In the past, you've talked about your love of cars. How does that impact how you lead and inspire the GM team through such pivotal change?
Well, I think one of the things this is such a special industry, because if you think about it, a vehicle is, for most people, it's their most important or second most important purchase. And they look at vehicles from what the brand represents and what the functionality of the vehicle is. I mean, I get letters from our customers every week telling me about how their vehicle protected them in a crash, or how long the vehicle's just changed over and it's over 300,000 miles and still going strong. And so many people name their vehicles. So we get to be in this really important participate in this really important part of people's lives. And, with the technology, we can make it better. I still love to drive, even though there's times and congestion. Using our Super Cruise technology, is something that I find very, very beneficial. So technology will change how we move. But again, it's so important. And it's just wonderful to be in an industry where we get to be a special part of people's lives.
My first car was a 1967 Camaro convertible that my dad handed down to me when I was 21 years old. Do you remember your first car?
I do, and I'm jealous because my first vehicle was a Chevrolet Chevette, which was when I was 18 years old. It was what took me to college. But my dad and I went and we put a deposit down on a Firebird. But then my mother thought I better choose a more efficient, price efficient vehicle, and we had to go back and get that deposit, and ended up in a Chevette. But I will tell you, it served me well.
I bet it did, and I bet you ended up driving a Firebird too.
Yeah, we did, and actually, my husband and son are restoring one right now.
Excellent, love it. Mary, last question. Have you thought about your legacy when your time ends as the CEO of one of the world's largest and most important companies? How would you like to be remembered?
Well, I'm so focused on this transformation and leading General Motors through it, because, we're a leader in the United States and many markets around the world. I want to make sure as we move through this transition, we lead it. So that is my focus. I would say, again, I serve at the pleasure of the board. I'm not going anywhere, at least not with my plans. But, to me, it's so important that we engage the strength of our people, because what really is at the heart of General Motors is our team and the phenomenal and incredible things they do every year to help deliver our results and move us on this journey. So, engaging our people and securing our leadership in this new world is what I focus on every day.
Thank you so much. Do you have any final thoughts for our audience?
Well, just I think the purpose and the focus on integrity in communications, I think now more than ever is so important. So I applaud what you're doing, and again, it's truly an honor.
Thank you for taking the time to be with us, and congratulations again on the Page Center Award for Integrity in Public Communication. Thank you.
Thank you very much.